Hello, everyone, and welcome to another week of the Legacy Premier League. I'm Rudy Brixa, and I'm joined here by Phil Gallagher. How are you doing, Phil?
I'm doing great. Ready to do some commentary on what will hopefully be some pretty cool games.
Absolutely. But before we get into that, let's review what we've gone through so far and what we're looking for through the day. So hopefully we'll get our bracket up in just a moment, and we'll be able to kind of go over that. We're going to start with the winner's bracket, and then we'll move down to the loser's bracket, where we are going to start today. And next week, we'll go back to the winner's bracket a little bit. But for this last week currently, we have seen, we saw some pretty interesting matchups too, and some really insane games. But I'm really, really excited to see what else we're going to see. So in our winner's bracket, we saw Michael Bonde beat Bob Wong. We saw Brian Cook beat Julian Knob. We saw Jody Keith beat Caleb Durward. And we're going to be covering Caleb's match today against Vincent Chandler. And we saw me get very lucky against Noah Walker. So we saw a lot of these players kind of move down the bracket into our loser's bracket here. And once you're in the loser's bracket, one loss and you're out once you're there. We saw Wilson Hunter lose to Andrea Mangucci. He's going to be moving on to play Bob Wong. We saw Jarvis Yu beat Mislav Lonkar in a Delvermere. Malamujo's out. Jarvis is in. He's going to be playing Julian Knob. We saw Vincent Chandler playing Death and Taxes beat Javier Dominguez playing a really off-the-wall cephalid breakfast deck. And he's going to be playing Caleb Durward. That's the match we're going to be covering today for our first round. And Phil, you kind of got beat by BBD. So
it wasn't kind of. Culligan's Command's real good against DNC. I don't know if you knew that, but
I wasn't aware. I appreciate you letting me know, just in case I get paired against the Death of Texas.
I'm ready for the high-end commentary tonight.
Right, for sure. So right now we're going to have Caleb Durward versus Vincent, but other matchups on the deck is Bob Wong versus Andrea Mangucci. That's going to be, I believe, Grixis Delver versus Blue Red Omnitel. Julian Knob versus Jarvis Yu. That's going to be Elves versus Grixis Delver again. And then we're also going to see Noah Walker versus Brian Braun-Duin. And that's going to be a Grixis Control mirror here. Now, what's interesting here is loser out. Winner gets to move on to the next, to the losers round 3. So that'll be really interesting to see what happens here. And let's go ahead and take a look at what our players are going to be playing here. We already know. We've seen them play before. We know Caleb's going to be playing a Steel Stompy deck, and we know Vincent's going to be playing his Death and Taxes deck. What do you like about this Steel Stompy deck, Phil?
Well, I like 4 cards in it, and they're all named Walking Ballista.
Would you say Walking Ballista is one of the best creatures of the last several years?
I don't know that I'd go quite that far. But Walking Ballista kind of took a little bit of lag time to see some play in Legacy. And I think people are now kind of picking up on how absurd it is. To kind of put it in terms of a card we're more familiar with, Walking Ballista is sort of like Jitte counters, but on a creature. And Jitte has been one of the most broken things you can be doing in all sorts of formats. And so when you just get to ping all the 1 and 2 toughness creatures of Legacy, especially when you're playing these soul lands that can pump it out sooner, it's very absurd.
For sure. So you believe that Caleb's path to victory, especially in game 1, is going to kind of lean on Walking Ballista a bit?
So I think in the game 1 scenarios, Caleb's goal is to get out of the gate as quickly as possible. He has a lot of high impact cards that can hit the board very quickly. Steel Overseer and Arcbound Ravager can really pose problems for D&T on the non-Phyrexian Revoker and Swords to Plowshares hands. So I think Caleb's plan A is ride early creatures to victory. And the plan B is use Walking Ballista to kill everything that Vincent loves.
For sure. Well, this will definitely be a really interesting matchup here. And I know Vincent, kind of interestingly enough, has a card that I think is going to be potentially relevant in this matchup. We see that Vincent Chandler is actually splashing a little bit of black in his deck. And part of the reason that Vincent is splashing black is for Orzhov Pontiff.
So we say that he's splashing black, but this is the tiniest of tiny splashes. There's not very much consideration given to actually casting it. There's only 3 sources in the deck that can cast Orzhov Pontiff. So Vincent's plan is really to use Orzhov Pontiff as a late game card that when he has a vial on 3, he can dump it in with Recruiter of the Guard.
Sure. Absolutely. Definitely playable. Obviously, also Cavern of Souls can help cast it as well. That is something that I believe we talked about on during commentary the last time we saw Vincent play, but it didn't end up being very relevant, and we did see Vincent go ahead and defeat his opponent quite handily here. And I got to say, this is probably one of the hands that Vincent here is really looking for.
Yes. So in my testing that I did of this matchup, being on the play is very important. And it looks like Vincent is on the play with an Ether Vial. That's the ideal start. I am going to just guess that he is going to win this game 1 because of that.
Yeah, and if we take a look at Caleb's hand is not very good. And I can't imagine that Caleb is going to want to keep this hand. It's really mopey, doesn't really do a lot against the deck that has Phyrexian Revoker themselves and Swords to Plowshares, Wasteland, Rishon Import. I got to say, I would not be surprised to see Caleb go ahead and take a mulligan on this hand.
I agree. So in Game 1 scenarios, the Steel Stompy deck has 8 cards that are almost dead versus DNT. The Thorns of Amethyst and Chalice of the Voids do very little. Chalice is acceptable on the play, but on the draw, it's very weak. So hands that are centered around those 2 cards are not going to be good.
Yeah, absolutely here. So I'm really interested. I can't imagine Vincent is ever going to mulligan this hand here, and we'll see here. I think okay, we are going to see Caleb mulligan here. I was a little bit worried for a moment that he might have kept here, but he is going to keep the 6 here. We're going to see Walking Ballista on top.
So luckily for Vincent, his hand is really full of 2 toughness creatures. And the Recruiter of the Guard, if that eats a Walking Ballista counter, that's stellar. That's absolutely fine. So here on Caleb's side, we do see him leading with the Chalice of the Void. Even though it's weak now that the Aether Vial is already in play, it does protect some of his creatures later on from removal.
Right, absolutely. It is going to be able to turn off Swords to Plowshares later in the game, which might be somewhat relevant especially down the line. But what's actually also interesting here is this feels kind of it for Vincent to really maybe put something like Mother of Runes or another Vial into play. That's not going to be an option for Vincent down the line. And although those cards are not super relevant, they could potentially have, a minor impact. Just having another creature in play means that you have another blocker, you have another way to attack. So although those cards are gone, it probably will end up okay here.
So, Rudy, would you play Stoneforge Mystic or Thalia on this turn?
I think when my opponent leads off with a Lotus Petal and Chalice of the Void, I think I'd rather get Stoneforge Mystic down. Getting the Jet here or getting Batterskull is going to be pretty impressive and is going to give a lot of tools to Vincent here. Whereas something like Thalia here might not really do too much.
I agree with you. Now that his opponent has kind of spewed out his non-creature spells of Lotus Petal and Chalice of the Void, the Thalia is likely to be lower impact. It doesn't mean bad, but lower impact. And now we're going to see the Thalia just kind of come in, still on the main phase, just tax some other potential spell.
No real reason not to wait on that. I mean, it's possible that a Chalice of the Void on 2 might come down, even though that's very unlikely here. I think we are pretty likely to see this Walking Ballista on 2, which is going to be really good at kind of holding down Vincent from really doing anything here. Etch Champion in play means that it's not going to be easy for Vincent to get in any damage here, and he's going to be looking for a flyer. And so I imagine that's why Caleb is playing the Ballista. Ballista does the most amount for him on this board.
Yeah, so Caleb right now is hoping to turtle up. If he can turtle up, then he can play Ravager and kind of feed a whole bunch of artifacts to the Ballista if he gets into a really bad spot and just try to nuke the world.
Right, and we see here, Vincent's board is kind of stalled. He doesn't really have too much to do here. Now, he does have the option to put Flicker Wisp into play and target Ballista, maybe force some action on Caleb's side. And I think that might be what I would try and do here. That Walking Ballista, as we've kind of talked about before, and as you've mentioned, is pretty good against Death and Taxes. So I can't imagine that Vincent's line will take him anywhere but trying to remove the Walking Ballista.
He might do it in a different way, though. What we might see is Violin, Recruiter of the Guard, go get Phyrexian Revoker, and revoke Ballista. And this will give Caleb the choice of, like, removing Thalia and Recruiter, or removing the Stoneforge Mystic before the Revoker just goes and shuts it off. And if he were to do something like that, then if Caleb took the Stoneforge, he could then set up like the Flickerwisp Recruiter chain for following turns.
Good. That's definitely a good point here for Vincent. No, I'm not really a Death and Taxes master, so I wouldn't know. I would know how some of these lines work, but we definitely the Flickerwisp Recruiter chain is definitely something to be impressed with, in my opinion.
It's sort of interesting to see Vincent just passing the turn. He could have, like, one way or another, I think dealing with the Ballista there is kind of important. So I'm trying to see why he would let his opponent go and potentially get one more counter. He might be going for some sort of like blowout situation where he's trying to get his opponent to pay the 4 mana to activate and then Flickerwisp it in response.
Yeah, it's possible there that's what he's looking. That's what he's looking to do. Maybe he just wants to wait to see what Caleb's plan is. Maybe he's trying to catch Caleb with his pants down. He goes to activate Ballista, and then Flickerwisp will get him. Possible Vincent has on his mind Arcbound Ravager, and it looks like that is possibly here what Vincent does have on his mind. And Flickerwisp is going to come in and take out this Walking Ballista here in response.
Yeah, so this Ballista is still getting the 2-for-1, right? It's still going to eat the Flickerwisp and the Thalia now. This Stoneforge is going to sit there looking awkward for a little bit longer. And we're going to see what's going to happen with this like Arcbound Ravager, Hangerback Walker situation. So for anyone not kind of familiar with Arcbound Ravager, when it dies, you get to move its counters to somewhere else. And moving those counters to Hangerback Walker means that if Hangerback Walker dies, you're getting a few friends to come along for the ride. And Swords to Plowshares is an excellent draw here, except for that Chalice that's on 1.
Absolutely here. Definitely something that we talked about earlier is, well, Chalice of the Void, maybe not so great, before the Aether Vial gets down. Still probably going to be pretty reasonable to go ahead and lock out those Swords to Plowshares here. I want to take a look at Vincent's deck because I want to make sure.
Are you checking to see if he has a Batterskull?
That is what I was checking, because I know you did not register Batterskull, which I thought was very surprising. And
yes, that was
pretty surprised.
Super metagamed choice.
Yeah, I'm pretty surprised to not see any here. Sword of Fire and Ice, I can't imagine is anywhere near as good.
Truth be told, I would have strongly considered getting Batterskull with the first Stoneforge Mystic that he played.
Yes, I would have liked that too. Obviously, Umezawa's here is pretty solid here overall, but I think I would have definitely gotten the Batterskull.
Yeah, if he gets to go in with the Jitte, it will be extremely powerful, but that's a big if right now. So
it's definitely a little cause for concern here, but again, with Hangerback in play, I have to imagine that Vincent's gonna look for another Flickerwisp here. Flickerwisp is probably just one of the best cards against all these X spells, all these 0/0s.
So notice Caleb kind of smartly using his Hangerback Walker activation right now rather than a little bit later on when the Flickerwisp could do more harm to it. But the Flickerwisp has a lot of lifting to do right now. There's sort of like 3 very good blinkable targets on the table. The Hangerback Walker, the Arcbound Ravager, and even the Chalice of the Void, because flickering the Chalice then turns on the Swords to Plowshares.
Right, and that is definitely a good point. Swords to Plowshares is obviously pretty powerful, and there's a lot of different lines open now for Vincent. Being able to flicker with the Chalice, make it a 0, plow the Hangerback Walker, close out some of the tokens that could be made. Just all different lines here. What I think is actually kind of interesting is it looks like Caleb intentionally tried to leave open mana to activate Inventor Sphere here. And if you're activating Inventor Sphere here with Vincent, I think you're looking for a Steel Overseer or another Walking Ballista.
Yeah, I reasonably think those are the 2 choices. So if he gets a Ballista, he gets to cast it on X = 2. and that could snipe the Flicker Wisp that's going to come down, as well as eat the Revoker. The Stoneforge Mystics that are on the table are not threatening without a Batterskull there currently.
So we'll see here what they're going to get here. It looks like, interestingly enough, it looks like Vincent is actually going for Sword of Fire and Ice here.
Caleb is going for Sword of Fire.
Caleb's going for Sword of Fire and Ice, which on an edge champion can literally slaughter all of Vincent's field. So this is actually really interesting here.
Ooh, a Phyrexian Revoker. So this prompts Vincent to finally make a move. Caleb knows about this Flicker Wisp, and we're just going to see the good old recruiter chain continue. It'll probably get another Flicker Wisp. That's what it does. It brings friends. Unfortunately, this Revoker is very likely to just go and shut off the Aether Vial, meaning that Vincent's hand, although it's full of very powerful cards, it's not actually going to be able to effectively use all of his resources. Swords to Plowshares is shut off. He's down to really using one of his cards or equipping each turn.
Right, and I think obviously one of the things that we talked about in the past, and especially on stream here, is one of the benefits to playing Death and Dax is being able to utilize Vial and creatures to kind of gain this onboard advantage. And really, by shutting off Aether Vial, you're really slowing down Vincent's draw. And even though Caleb doesn't really have a strong draw here, he doesn't have a fast draw, he is kind of building up towards something and really closing Caleb really closing Vincent out from being able to cast multiple spells in a turn means that a deck with Ancient Tomb is probably going to be pretty good at getting ahead here. But it looks like Revoker named Umezawa's Jit here.
This surprises me a little bit. Obviously, we get to see Vincent's hand, and so I'm very sort of swayed by looking at Vincent's hand and going Vial is insane right now. And
absolutely.
I think the issue with naming Jitte and making that attack is that he just gets another Flicker Wisp, right?
Well, I think the big issue is if he names Vial, then Umezawa's Jitte is just going to go to Flicker Wisp, and then Flicker Wisp can start mowing down creatures, including the Etch Champion as well. So that might be a reason not to. And obviously, Hangerback Walker, sacking it to Arcbound Ravager, putting a bunch of Thopters into play, yes, that stops it once. But then once a Jit comes in there and starts eating creatures, and this Recruiter their guard chain starts, and we start getting more Flicker Wisp, then it's going to be really, really hard for Caleb to get back into the game unless he names exactly Jit there.
So Vincent's pausing in his upkeep here. He's considering ticking up to 4 for this Palace Jailer, it seems. He does so, he kind of stops his Flicker Wisp Recruiter of the Guard chains that he's doing. And Palace Jailer is not exactly a safe play currently. The Etch Champion gets to pretty easily attack through the current board.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're getting to a point where Vincent's going to have to play pretty carefully to try and get through here. But one of the interesting things is Caleb is on a pretty low life total. So I can envision a ton of scenarios where it's going to be pretty hard for Caleb's going to have to be very careful with his use of Ancient Tomb and keep more track of his life total here. Obviously, Hangerback Walker is going to be pretty good at stomping up a lot of different creatures here, and I think we're just going to see Hangerback Walker eat the Stoneforge Mystic. That makes the most amount of sense here, because even if Actually, no. I don't think he's going to actually let damage happen. I think he's just going to put a counter on it and then use Ravager to sack it to prevent counters from getting on the equipment here.
I agree. And so because of these potential Thopters coming in, that's why Vincent didn't attack with the Flicker Wisp. Like, you might look at the board and go, there's no flyers there, but the threat of the Hangerback Walker sacrifice, like, if he goes about this turn differently, then he probably just loses the Flicker Wisp to a Thopter.
Right. And really interesting here is what is Vincent's use going to be with this Wasteland? Is he going to try to close Caleb off from being able to cast multiple spells in a turn, or is he going to go after the Factory? And it looks like he is going to go after Tomb here, kind of stranding this Sword of Fire and Ice in Caleb's hand. It looks like that's his plan for the moment.
Okay, so Vincent now is going to be able to actually use this Swords to Plowshares somewhat effectively. We might end up seeing just like Flicker Wisp out the Chalice, Swords to Plowshares, the Arcbound Ravager. That's a little less appealing now that the second Ravager is there. He can just continue to play the pass the counters around game.
Absolutely. So Arcbound Ravager here, obviously a pretty powerful card. And even though Flicker Wisp here is going to be pretty solid, being able to just kind of attack through Thopters, there are going to be some chumps, especially for the next few turns as well. So, and again, I think we're at a point here where I think we might be at its best for Vincent to maybe use Flicker Wisp here. Maybe now's the time to get rid of Chalice, use Swords to Plowshares, tag out this Phyrexian Revoker, put this Jit onto the second Flicker Wisp, be able to attack with a Flicker Wisp with the Jit and a Flicker Wisp with the Sword of Fire and Ice, and that might really start letting Vincent turn the corner here.
Yeah, I feel like Vincent's pretty heavily favored. I think in order for Caleb to get out of it, he might need to get kind of creative with managing his versus his opponent's life total. Because at any point here, he has the opportunity to really go hard on the Etched Champion and sacrifice a whole bunch of stuff to Ravagers in order to make the Etched Champion into a big, and potentially, kill Vincent in 2 to 3 attacks.
Right. What also Vincent might do here is he might blink this Recruiter of the Guard, and I think he might be going to get Orzhov Pontiff. Which is another potential option here. And Orzhov Pontiff is going to clear out some number of these Thopters and Phyrexian Revoker, let this Sword of Fire and Ice really get through here. And I think that might just take out the Etched Champion here and kind of leave Caleb with not a lot. Oh, I'm sorry, one moment.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and take over for a minute. I think Rudy's hungry. He needs some Taco Bell. Taco Bell, if you would like to sponsor the Legacy Premier League, please get in touch with Julian. All right, so this Orzhov Pontiff is going to come down off of the vial, and it is going to force Caleb into a situation where he's going to have to take a whole lot of actions. So the Revokers and the Thopters here are going, as well as the second Arcbound Ravager if he does not go and take another action. So we're going to see a lot of things being sacrificed to Ravagers.
Absolutely here. I don't even think these Ravagers can get up to enough damage to really even attack through back here, and I think we might be having this game end soon. But as Caleb has the Taco Bell sponsorship on his face, might as well show everyone that I actually just ordered Taco Bell for delivery as well. So I did have that show up. So I do appreciate Taco Bell. You guys should sponsor me.
And speaking of, it's probably a good time while we're waiting for this to resolve to mention that the Legacy Premier League is sponsored by Cardboard.live, The Epic Storm, and MTG First. And we couldn't be bringing you this great content without all of them. Cardboarder gives us loan accounts to use for the league so we can play with all of these awesome cards. Cardboard.live has that awesome extension, which hopefully you clicked to see the deck lists over there.
Yeah, absolutely. The Cardboard.live deck list is just so convenient just to be able to click, and you can kind of move it around to wherever you want. So if it's in an annoying position, you can kind of do what you need to move it around.
I'm convinced it's going to be the future of Magic coverage.
It's really interesting here. Now, I wonder if Caleb can get to a point where he can where he can make this Etch champion large enough to kill Vincent, but I don't think we're going to get there.
So the biggest issue with that is now that he's gone so low on the artifact count, he actually currently does not have Metalcraft. Well, okay, sorry. He has Metalcraft now, but likely at the end of this turn, he's not going to. Because we might have to see, like, some amount of chumping, and we might even see, like, some more sacrificing to the Arc-bound Ravagers so that no Jitte counters happen.
Excuse me. Thank you. But what is, this is just getting more and more brutal for Caleb. Caleb is falling farther and farther behind as Vincent's board just gets larger and larger. And yes, this Etch champion is large, but Caleb's going to need another artifact. And even if he finds another artifact to turn on Metalcraft, he's still just going to be dead on board to this Flicker Wisp just attacking.
Yeah, I don't know that there are any outs anymore to what's going on here.
Yeah, and I see here, just Recruiter of the Guard just going to come down, just go grab another creature, and that's just going to kind of really just lock things up here for Vincent here. And Lodestone Column off the top for Caleb. Not really ideal. Not really what Caleb is looking for here, and I think we might see.
I like animating factory and then wastelanding my own factory here.
Well, I think Caleb is just going to attack for 9 here. I think that's Caleb's plan.
Well, that's fine too.
I think here, just going to go ahead and attack for 9, pass back. Caleb's going to force Vincent to kill him. I like that. Don't concede. Go out on your own terms. Caleb is actually, I don't know if you know this, Caleb is actually a streamer. He actually just started streaming, brand new streamer.
Oh man!
So I really like that he's he's trying to use this Legacy League to kind of maybe make a name for himself. But you should definitely check out Caleb's stream where. Apparently they were instructed not to scoop because Bob is going to be late today.
This makes a little bit more sense.
Yes. But I do like here, this Palace Shaler is just going to come down. Vincent here is just kind of showing off everything that his deck can do at the moment. He's like, look at all the cards that I have in my hand. Don't I win?
I think this is where we hit 1, and then we hit attack with all creatures. And I don't know. It's a lot of math for me. That's a lot of counting.
Yeah, this is just a turn sideways. Make your opponent figure it out here, and it looks like Caleb figured it out. He is going to go to -2 and die. So you're going to go to sideboarding here. Let's start with Vincent's deck. Phil, what is Vincent going to be boarding in here? What is he looking for?
So the cards to consider are Council's Judgment, Pithing Needle, Path to Exile, and I guess Gideon's not the worst thing in the world, and Orzhov Pontiff. So really in approaching the sideboarding here, you have plenty of cards you can bring in. So you actually want to start with what you want to bring out here. And you start by dumping those Mother of Runes. They do basically nothing in a matchup like this. And then you also probably don't need all of your Thalias, especially when you're on the draw. They don't have very much impact in this matchup. Yes, they're a first striker, but everything on the other side gets much, much bigger than just like two power or toughness pretty quickly. So I expect to see some number of all moms going out, some number of Thalias going out. And if we went with all 4 of those, that'd be 8 cards. So that'd be 2 Judgment, 1 Needle, 2 Path, 1 Pontiff, and then either keep 2 Thalias or only keep 1 Thalia and play a Gideon. I'd expect to see something resembling that.
Absolutely. And I think from looking at Caleb's side, we're probably going to see Warping Whale, probably going to see Sorcerer's Spyglass. I think Sorcerer's Spyglass might be okay, just naming like Vial, naming a sword might be okay. Maybe Sorcerer's Spyglass is a little too narrow to be good, but it is the kind of card
I think Sorcerer's Spyglass is very good.
Yeah.
It shuts off equipment, it shuts off Vial.
Yeah, absolutely here. Another card that we might potentially see is Karn. Karn is a way to make a gigantic creature that is, Death and Taxes might not be able to interact with, especially if the Chalice for 1 comes down pretty early, or just being able to draw a bunch of cards might help Caleb keep pace with Death and Taxes.
Essentially, everything in his sideboard except for the Ley Line of the Voids is playable in this sort of matchup. I don't expect the Ensnaring Bridges to come in because Caleb's going to be the bigger creature deck in most cases. But I expect to see like Spyglass, Warping Whales, Jitte, Karn, and maybe even the Caracas just as another land.
Yeah, so interesting here. Looks like Kenobi is going to be mulling down to 5 here. I think he kept the Flicker Wisp, or he might have bottomed it. I didn't quite actually see here.
It went to the top.
So he's going to keep that. Caleb here is going to have a great draw. Ancient Tomb, into Hangerback Walker, a Lotus Petal. It's just going to be a nice little setup here. No reason really not to play the Lotus Petal out. And you're going to pass it back to Vincent here.
Yep, and he'll get to start with the turn 1 Aether Vial. We're going to see whether or not that is going to be fast enough here. Caleb is probably going to put him under a lot of pressure. Ooh, and that Steel Overseer
immediately here
is going to do some work.
Steel Overseer here off the top for Caleb. Going to be pretty solid no matter what Caleb decides to go here. And it looks like Caleb's going to go ahead and play this Mishra's Factory, cast the Steel Overseer. I also wouldn't be surprised to see this Volt Scourge go ahead and hit the pin as well. And this is fantastic here. And now Caleb has this interesting note. Does he want to use this Lotus Petal to make Hangerback Walker a 2/2 now, or just attack here with Hangerback Walker? And I'm sure we'll find out together. But I think I almost would rather use this Lotus Petal to just make Hangerback Walker even larger.
And I would like to do it before Vincent untaps as well.
Oh, interesting and love. Caleb's just going to go ahead and turn sideways here. Vincent Chandler going to act Aether Vial on 0. Pretend that he has Dryad Arbor, which you can put in as well alongside Mennonite or Ornithopter. None of those cards in Vincent's deck list, so he's just going to go ahead and put in nothing. Aether Vial is going to tick up to 1. Plains and Phyrexian Revoker here is going to be Vincent's play. What is Vincent going to name here, Phil?
There's multiple targets in play, but I feel like Steel Overseer is the really scary one.
Yeah, I think Vincent agrees with you too, and he is going to name Steel Overseer. Another Mishra's Factory off the top here. Not very great for Caleb, but this Lodestone Golem at the very minimum is going to come down here for Caleb. And Caleb is at 10 life now with all of the damage that he's taken off of all these Aether Vials here.
So Caleb, if he wants, can actually just kind of start getting pretty aggressive with these creatures. Like the Steel Overseer attack is essentially free, right? If he trades it for the Revoker, then another Steel Overseer further down the line could become very powerful.
Absolutely here. And now Vincent's in a spot where does he want to try and block here and trade off? And it looks like there's no reason for Vincent to really make any moves just yet. So we are going to see attack for 2. I'm going to drop Vincent down to 17 here. Cavernous Soul is going to be the draw for Vincent, but Vincent is going to play the Plains here. No real reason to play the Cavern just yet. Aether Vial is going to go ahead and tick up to 2 here, and
he's going to have no plays this turn, unfortunately, because of that Lodestone Golem.
Yeah, Lodestone Golem is going to kind of hurt just a little bit here. We are going to see this Hangerback Walker kind of rolling up to 2 here, and I wouldn't be surprised to see this Lodestone Golem start getting busy as well.
Oh yeah, I'm fine with turning most of those creatures sideways. And like we have the Mishra's Factory, which can also activate as well. Awkwardly, Caleb here is using one of his Lotus Petals to do that so that he doesn't have to take some damage from the Ancient Tombs, while also leaving up the other factory to pump the first.
Absolutely here. And this is a pretty smart heads-up play from Caleb. Caleb knows that he's definitely going to be in a potentially bad spot here, so he's just playing safe as possible. Vincent Chandler is going to go ahead, shove that Phyrexian Revoker in front of Steel Overseer, drop down to 6. Caleb's going to go up to 12 here and just kind of pass it back. Rich and Import off the top, probably not what Vincent is looking for here.
No, most certainly not. So this is going to be kind of awkward, right? Like he's going to probably hard cast this Mirran Crusader, and then he'll have a Flicker Wisp up to do whatever he needs to do with it. It's going to kind of depend on the attack that Caleb's makes, but it's probably going to be a fog of some nature.
Well, even taking out Hangerback Walker might be pretty reasonable. If Caleb were to draw something like, let's say, Arcbound Ravager, a Flicker Wisp here would be a fantastic way to kind of interact. And City of Traders off the top is going to give Caleb a free way to kind of activate both of these factories here as well.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I can't imagine there's anything to do but, right-click attack all here for Caleb. He's got to try and get his opponent dead. And at 6 life, that is a pretty solid spot to be in here.
Yeah, so we're going to see the blink on the Hangerback Walker. We'll probably see Mirror Crusader blocking a factory, and we'll probably see the Flicker Wisp trade for the Lodestone Golem. In this way, Vincent will only take 3 this turn, and there's still a lot of pressure there, but hopefully this is good enough.
Right,
he's going to need help from the top of the deck.
So we are going to see Vincent take 3 down to 3. Caleb is going to gain another life off of this Vault Scourge, and that life gain is not actually irrelevant. We've seen a lot of
oh my god.
All right. Well, to be fair, I guess Vincent is strong. Oh boy. This shit off the top is, I think, going to kind of end things, especially when you consider that this Mirror Crusader with Double Strike is going to get twice the amount of counters here, and I don't think there's really any way for Caleb D to skill his way out of this one.
Now, to be fair, Vincent had a lot of great top decks this turn.
Oh, absolutely.
A Recruiter, a Flicker Wisp, basically most creatures. Like, most of the things he could have drawn would have been pretty spicy. But this is about the best of the best.
This is a... Can also sit here forever, I guess. Well, that is pretty devastating for Caleb here. Caleb brought a really unique deck. I know this was a played at the Pro Tour a little bit here, but I think this is going to be it for Caleb. I don't know how Caleb is going to get out of this, although we are going to get to Caleb's turn. We are going to see. I assume Caleb could draw something like Sorcerer's Spyglass here, turn off the Jit. Maybe that would be a good start. But
there's still just the Mirror. Okay, what does this do?
Ooh, Karn Scion of Urza, kind of an interesting draw, but I don't think it's going to do anything.
It doesn't actually do anything, unfortunately.
No,
like he can make the construct, but
construct into a
death machine
shit with like 4 counters on it. Yeah, it doesn't really matter. And that's going to be it. Heading back to the bracket, that means we are going to see Caleb Durward. He's out. Vincent Chandler is moving on. Vincent Chandler is going to play the winner of Noah Walker versus Brian Braun-Duin, and that is a Grixis Control mirror match. So I don't know how good Vincent is feeling even about this, about his next match coming up.
Yeah, in all my testing for the GP, I feel great about Death and Taxes, except against that Grixis Control matchup. That one's pretty rough.
Oh yeah. That is definitely super brutal here. So we are going to see Vincent Chandler 2-0 Caleb Durward. Vince is going to be moving on to losers round 3. We're going to get to see Vincent play again next week. That's pretty good spot for Vincent to be in. He got absolutely massacred when he played his mono black deck. Now he's brought Death and Taxes, and he's doing a little bit better. So you got to hope that you got to say there might be a correlation.
Oh yeah, he really redeemed himself there.
Absolutely.
A lot of people raised eyebrows at the Pack Rat deck, myself included.
Right,
but he's making a run through the losers bracket, and we'll see how far he can go.
Absolutely,
I always want to see more DMT.
Absolutely, and I think we're going to see Bob's match next. I think we're going to see Bob versus Andrea next. That'll be really interesting. That'll be Grixis Delver versus Blue Red Omnitel, and I think that'll be really, really exciting and potentially really interesting.
So what do you think of Grixis Delver right now as a deck?
Fine. I mean, I'm never excited to play it. I mean, it's just like sometimes you get free wins off Delver in days, but for the most part, the deck just doesn't excite me. Young Pyromancer doesn't seem as well positioned anymore. You don't have a very good 2-drop. Gurmag Angler is not really a 2-drop as well. So we'll certainly see. But I'm kind of excited to see this match. Andre and Bob are both very good players, and they're going to be playing a tight matchup, one where Andre is going to have to play around a lot of different counter spells, and Bob is going to have to try and figure out how he wants to maneuver through. So We're going to pass it on to, I think, a brief commercial for a little bit, and then Vincent will be coming in to do some commentary. Once again, let's thank our sponsors, Cardboard.live, Card Hoarder, MTG First, and the Epic Storm. Without them, this wouldn't be possible, but it wouldn't be as easy as it has been.
All right, so thank you very much. My name is Phil Gallagher. I run Thraben University.
I'm Rudy Brixa, and you can find me on Twitter if you really want. I don't have a Thraben University. Sorry.